Buongiorno ragazzi and welcome to a new Italian 101 video. Our topic for today is il verbo avere, or the verb avere, which means to have. Okay, we're going to start by reading a little text about a topic that you know is dear to my heart, myself. Ciao ragazzi, io sono Umberto. Sono professore e ho 40 anni. Mia moglie ed io abbiamo un piccolo appartamento a Harlem. Il nostro appartamento ha 2 camere. Noi abbiamo 2 figli. I nostri figli sono Agustin e Gregorio. Agustin ha 8 anni e Gregorio ha 3 anni. Loro sempre hanno molta voglia di giocare. E voi, quanti anni avete? Avete un cane o un gatto? So that's a little text about myself and my little family, right? Don't worry if you did not understand a lot of it, although there are some small sentences here and there that you should understand fully, right? For example, io sono Umberto. You guys already know that that means I am Umberto. Or sono professore, that means I'm a professor, right? But there's a bunch of stuff here that you don't know. Don't worry, I just want you to focus on those words that I emphasized when I read the text and that I have bolded and underlined here. Because all of them are verbs. And moreover, all of them are conjugations of one particular verb, the one we're going to study today, the verb avere, which means to have. For example, the sentence at the top that says mia moglie ed io abbiamo un piccolo appartamento a Harlem, that means my wife and I have a small apartment in Harlem. Okay, that abbiamo is we have. Okay, so just like essere, this is a verb that needs to change, to be conjugated, depending on who is doing the action. In this case, of course, not the action of being, but the action of having. That is what we're going to look at today, the verb avere. First, I'm going to show you the conjugation table, and we're going to pronounce it. Io ho, tu hai, lui, lei ha, noi abbiamo, voi avete, loro hanno. Notice several things, please, about this conjugation. The first one, of course, is that, as I emphasized when we did the alphabet, in Italian, H, has no sound whatsoever. So please don't pronounce this ho, hi, ha, because that's not the way it goes. The H has no sound. Second thing, for the noi form, which is abbiamo, and for the loro form, which is hanno, remember that doppie, the double consonants, like the double B in abbiamo and the double B in hanno, need to be pronounced. So it's a slightly longer sound with a small pause in the middle. Let's do the whole thing again. Io ho, tu hai, lui, lei ha, noi abbiamo, voi avete, loro hanno. Good, so that's the verb avere, and as I said, it means to have. So io means I have, tu hai means you have, lui ha, he has, and so on and so forth, right? So by now we have actually 2 verbs, right? We have essere which goes like this. Io sono, tu sei, lui è, noi siamo, voi siete, loro sono. And now we have avere, which goes io, tu hai, lui ha, noi abbiamo, voi avete, loro hanno. Let's do something similar to what I did in the text with which I introduced the lesson. Let's have some sentences in Italian in which we are using one or both of these verbs. For example, number one. So what do we have here? We have something similar to what we did in the last lesson, right? We have sentences in which the verb hasn't been conjugated and we need to fill in the blank with the correct conjugation, okay? Let's look at numero uno, number one. Io essere studente, io avere 18 anni. So it's quite simple, right? Who's doing the action here? Io. So I need to use the io forms here. So it would be io sono studente, I am a student. Io ho 18 anni. That means I am 18 years old. But as you will see in the next lesson, in Italian, you are not your age, you have it. So literally that means I have 18 years. Numero 2. Lei avere 2 gatti. 2 gatti means 2 cats. And lei means she, so she has 2 cats. What form of avere do I need here? Well, it's clear from the sentence, right? I need the lei form, so lei ha 2 gatti. She has 2 cats. I hope you're seeing where I'm going with this, right? You simply do the same thing that we did in the last lesson. You find the correct conjugation of the verb, right? This one actually comes from the text. Noi avere un appartamento a New York. We have an apartment in New York, right? So what form of avere do we need here? We need the noi form, which from the table you can see is abbiamo. Noi abbiamo un appartamento a New York. Numero 4. Tu avere una penna. I'm asking, do you have a pen? Right? To one person, so I use tu. I'm being informal. What do I use here? Clearly the tu form. So tu hai una penna? Do you have a pen? And then I say io non avere la mia. I don't have my own. I switched the subject, right? In the first part, I was talking to you, asking you whether you have a pen. Now I'm saying that I don't have my own. So I have to say io non ho la mia. I need to change the conjugation, right? Numero 5, the last one. Michael essere un ragazzo americano. Okay, so here we need to look at the sentence and find the subject. Who would be the subject of our sentence? Who is doing the action of being an American guy? Well, clearly it's Michael, right? What form of the verb do I use for Michael? Well, Michael is he, right? So I would use the lui form. The lui form of essere, which is è. Michael è un ragazzo americano. Michael is an American guy. And then lui avere 20 anni. Lui ha 20 anni. Okay? So just like essere, avere is a verb, and therefore we need to change it depending on the subject. We need to conjugate it to make it fit whoever is doing the action of having. Okay? So remember, you need to memorize these two. Essere and avere. Extremely important. Okay? As always, use whatever strategies you know for memorizing short strings of words, but these definitely need to be in your mind at all times. Okay? Now I'm going to introduce you to a new word in Italian. This is a suitcase, right? In Italian, we say valigia. Pronounce with me, please. Valigia. And we're going to play a little game which is called Cosa hanno nella valigia? Which means, what do they have in their suitcase? What do I mean? Well, you'll see in a second. Here we have this guy that is a little famous. Maybe you know who he is. He has a suitcase and he has something in his suitcase. And we need to say in Italian who he is and what he has in his suitcase. Um, for our assistance, we are going to have this available, which is the table. We just studied the table of the verb avere, right? So who is this guy? Does anyone recall his name? He's Brad Pitt, right? He's an actor named Brad Pitt. He has a suitcase. What does he have in his suitcase? I know it's a little ridiculous, but please bear with me. What that is a whiteboard. What is the word for whiteboard in Italian that comes directly from our first vocab list? The word is lavagna, right? So look at this sentence. I'm going to build in Italian. Brad Pitt ha una lavagna nella valigia. Brad Pitt ha una lavagna nella valigia. Okay? Nella valigia means in the suitcase. Brad Pitt is, of course, our subject here, the one that is doing the action of having, right? I am using the lui form of the verb because the subject is he, so ha. And then I just said what he has, una lavagna, right? Notice then that I'm also using two more concepts of the previous classes. I am using the vocab list for the objects of the classroom, and I am using the indefinite articles, right? The indefinite article for lavagna is una. Okay, so that's the game we're going to play. We are going to look at some images of people having stuff in their suitcases, and we're going to try and say in Italian what they have. Okay, so here he has a whiteboard. Let's have him have something else in his suitcase, something that would actually fit it, like two books. Okay, so what do I say here? First, I need to think what form of the verb I need. It would be the same one as before, right? It's quite simple because it's the lui form of the verb. So Brad Pitt ha. Now what are these? Books. How many? Two. How do you say two in Italian? Oh, we also studied that, right? We studied the numbers from 0 to 10. Do you remember how you say two? Let's say due. A, due. And then how do you say book? I hope you remember that it is libro. But there's a little trick here because it's not one book. It's more than one. So we need to use the plural form of libro, which is libri, because O goes to I. Brad Pitt ha due libri nella valigia. He has two books in his suitcase. So we're actually even using more concepts, right? We're using the numbers and the plurals. It's quite a simple game, but we're actually using a lot of the stuff we have learned during this semester. Next person with stuff in their suitcase. This is Beyonce, right? What does she have in her suitcase? Those are 3 pencils, right? First things first, what form of avere? So it's Beyonce, it's one person, it's lei. Same form of the verb that we used for Brad. Beyonce ha. How many? Tre. And how do you say pencil? Matita. But it needs to be the plural. Ha tre matite. Beyonce ha tre matite nella valigia. Beyonce has 3 pencils in the suitcase. Next one. Now she does not have 3 pencils. She actually has 6 markers. Same form of the verb, right? Beyonce ha. How do you say 6? Sei. And how you say marker? I hope you remember it's pennarello. But what's the plural of pennarello? O goes to I. Beyonce ha 6 pennarelli nella valigia. Let's change the person. Who is this? This is not Beyonce. I'm pretty sure you know who she is. She's quite famous and she's awesome. She's Serena Williams, right? Serena, or pronouncing it in Italian, Serena, which means actually the calm one or the serene one. It's a nice name, right? Serena. What form of the verb avere do we use for Serena? The same one that we have used for Brad and for Beyonce, right? Because it's one person doing the action. Lei, right? She. So Serena. Now what is that in his suitcase? That's a student, right? How do you say student? Studente, right? It's a male student, so studente. But we need to remember that studente is masculine and begins with S plus consonant. So we need to use uno as its article. Serena uno studente nella valigia. Okay? Let's change a little bit more. So now we have actually two people having students in their suitcases, in their suitcase, sorry. So the first one is Serena, the second one is Beyonce, right? And they have two students in their suitcase. So what do we do here? So far we have been using only one form of avere. It was a, because it was always he or she, right? It was Brad or Serena or Beyonce, but now it's two people. So it's not he or she, it's they, right? It's loro. So what is the loro form of avere? Hanno. Cosa hanno nella valigia? What do they have in their suitcase? Well, it's two students, right? How do you say two? Due. And how do you say students? E goes to I. Studenti. Serena e Beyonce hanno due studenti nella valigia. Why did we change a for hanno? Because now it's two people. It's they. Let's go back to one person, Beyonce again, right? So it's one person, it's she, so it's a, Beyonce a. And what does she have in her suitcase? Cosa nella valigia? It's a student. What kind of student though? This is a female student, right? So it's not uno studente, it's una studentessa. Beyonce ha una studentessa nella valigia. Beyonce has a female student in her suitcase. Let's change the person and let's also change what they have, right? This makes a little more sense, right? It's not a female student, it's only two pens. Who is this guy? I'm sure you know him. He's great. His name's Barack, right? What form of the verb do I use for Barack? The Louis form, because it's he, right? So Barack a. And what is that? Those are pens. How many? Due. And how do you say pen? Penna. But you need the plural here. A goes to E. Barack ha due penne nella valigia. Barack has two pens in the suitcase. Prossima. Now we have two people. Who are these two people? One of them is Barack. The other one, who is she? She's even more awesome than Barack, and her name's Michelle, right? Barack and Michelle. So again, now it's not just he or she, now it's they. So it's the loro form, right? We need to use hanno. Barack and Michelle hanno. And what is that? That's a table. How do you say a table in Italian? Un tavolo. Barack and Michelle hanno un tavolo nella valigia. Okay? Barack and Michelle have a table in their suitcase. I know. Extremely useful sentence. You're going to be saying that all the time in Italy. Moving on. So, what's going on here now? So, I want us to use the noi form. I want us to say we have. Okay? How do we say we have? Abbiamo. Right? Remember, you actually don't need to say the subject all the time in Italian, right? You don't need to say we have. You only need to say the have form, the form of the verb to have that fits noi, right? So abbiamo. And what is that in our suitcase? That's a window. How do you say a window? I hope you remember that you say una finestra. Abbiamo una finestra nella valigia. We have a window in our suitcase. One window, let's make it two. It's a big suitcase. So, abbiamo again, because it's noi. First it was una finestra, but now it's two. Due. And what's the plural of finestra? A goes to E. Abbiamo due finestre nella valigia. Okay? Now I want to say that you guys have, not we, but you guys. So I don't say abbiamo, I say avete. That's the form of avere for voi. Avete is you guys have. You guys have what in your suitcase? That's a door. So it's una porta. Avete una porta nella valigia. You guys have a door in the suitcase. Again, let's change it to something that makes a little more sense. I want to say you have, right? But not as in you guys, you one person. So it's I. It's the tu form, right? And what are those? And I guess you could think that they're books, but look at the spiral binding. Those are actually notebooks, right? How many? Due. How do you say notebook? Quaderno, right? But we need the plural, quaderni. Tu hai due quaderni nella valigia. Or simply, hai due quaderni nella valigia. You have two notebooks in your suitcase. And who is this guy? We know him well, right? Sadly. His name is Donald, right? What form of the verb avere do we use for Donald? The same one we use for Barack or Michelle or Serena, right? Because it's he, Donald And what is that thing? It says college. How you say college? I hope you remember università, right? How do you say a university? I hope you remember that università is feminine and begins with a vowel, so this is the article we need to use, un, with the apostrophe. Un'università. Donald has one university or a university in his suitcase. Quite realistic. Moving on. Who is this guy? He's Michael, right? What form of the verb for Michael? We know this, right? We've done it a lot today. Michael, And what is that thing that he has in his suitcase? A clock, which in Italian is un orologio. Michael ha un orologio nella valigia. Prossima. Again, noi. What is the form for noi? Noi abbiamo, right? We have. And that's still an orologio. Abbiamo un orologio nella valigia. We have a clock in the suitcase. How about you having a pencil? You one person. How do you say that? Well, the tu form is I. And how do you say a pencil? You should know this by heart by now. Una matita. Hai una matita nella valigia. You have a pencil in your suitcase. Or in the suitcase. Prossima. This is a chair. I want to use the loro form. Which is the loro form? It's hanno, which means they have, right? I actually don't need to say loro hanno. I just say hanno, right? As you can see from the table, that form is exclusive for loro, so I don't need to say loro hanno, I can say hanno. And what is a chair? Una sedia. Hanno una sedia nella valigia. But let's give this an actual subject. Let's talk about Barack and Michelle again, and now they have chairs in their suitcase, right? So what form of the verb do I use for Barack and Michelle? The loro form, right, is they. Barack and Michelle hanno, right? And these are chairs, so it's sedia, right? But it's two, so it's due. And what's the plural for sedia? Sedie. Barack and Michelle hanno due sedie nella valigia. Now I want you to have a chair, right? So I. And how do you say a chair? Una sedia, right? I hope you're getting the hang of this by now, right? We simply change the verb according to the subject. Now I want you to have something else, not a chair but a professor. I know that's kind of creepy, but there you go. You have a professor in the suitcase. So I, and how do you say a professor? Un professore. Hai un professore nella valigia. And now it's us having two professors. in the third case. So what do we say? Abbiamo, that's the noi form. And how do you say two professors? Two is due, and then the plural of professore is professori. Abbiamo due professori nella valigia. That is the verb avere. Let's do it one more time. Io ho, tu hai, lui lei ha, noi abbiamo, voi avete, loro hanno. And again, that means I have, you have, he, she has, we have, you guys have, they have. The verb avere, right? One last thing. The verb avere is very useful in Italian because we have a lot of idiomatic expressions that use the verb. By idiomatic, I mean that it's something that is said a lot and is said in a very peculiar fashion. Okay? And it's used all the time. So let's look at these pictures. And I'm going to describe them each using an Italian sentence. For example, the first one, that guy is suffering. Clearly, there's a huge sun above his head. He's hot, right? Marcellino, that's his name. Marcellino ha caldo. What did I just say? In English, you would say Marcellino or Marcellino is hot, right? In Italian, you don't say that he's hot. In Italian, you say he has heat. Okay? Ha caldo. And the next one, what's happening to this guy? He's hungry, right? Where in Italian, you are not hungry, you have hunger. Giovanni ha fame. Avere fame means to be hungry. Notice that I am conjugating the verb avere, right? I'm using the lui form here because it fits Giovanni. Let's do the next one. The poor guy is cold, right? The way I say it is Roberto ha freddo. He has cold. Not has a cold, he has cold. He is cold, okay? Next one, he's in a hurry. You say avere fretta. So, Ettore ha fretta. In the next one, she's scared. And you say in Italian to have fear. Avere paura. La ragazza ha paura. The girl is scared or has fear. In the next one, we have a cute donkey who's adding 2 plus 2 correctly. He's right, right? In Italian, to be right, you say by saying that they have reason. Filocolo ha ragione. Avere ragione means to be right. In the next one, however, he is wrong. He forgot the correct result of this addition, and he's saying that 2 plus 2 is 9. He's not right, he's wrong. Ha torto. Avere torto, to be wrong. And what about this guy? He's thirsty, right? Michele ha sete. And the next one, poor guy is sleepy. Santino ha sonno. Avere sonno, to be tired or to be sleepy. But I also can say ha bisogno di dormire, which means he needs to sleep. To need, you say by saying in Italian avere bisogno. For example, this guy needs a boat. Cesare ha bisogno di una barca. He needs a boat. Avere bisogno di, to need. And one last one, this guy wants an ice cream. Who does not? I always want ice cream. Very, very useful. This is, in fact, very useful in Italy because Italian ice cream is great. Nicola ha voglia di un gelato. Avere voglia, to want. Okay? This is just an introduction to these idiomatic expressions. We will do them again more carefully in the future, but I just wanted to show you guys some of the uses of the verb avere in Italian. Grazie ragazzi, a dopo.